So I got into acting. I actually was really involved in the theater department at our school. I got to go to the Beverly Hills school system, so we had like a primo theater department, and a lot of really like big names came out of there. Just above me, Gina Gershon, you know, I think everybody had a crush on her. She looks exactly the same. I'm like, how does she look like that? Nicolas Cage, who was Nicholas Coppola, Elizabeth Daily, Jeanette Goldstein, nice thespian little Jewish girl who played like badass Latina in one of the Alien movies, right? And we had John Turteltaub, who is on the other side of the camera. He was in my grade, great guy. So it was definitely like a who's who. Like, it was a pretty good school to be going to, and especially if you were a theater geek, right? My mom and dad were always in the industry, and I just kind of fell into it. It's definitely in my family's blood, and even my aunt, who had done films with Elvis Presley.
And she leaned down and kissed me, and I guess I kissed her.
She was actually Elvis's girlfriend before Priscilla. If you look up Annie Helm, there's all these pictures of her and Elvis like they were an item, so I get the most starstruck, I think, about that. I started out modeling, and back then it wasn't cool to be unusual looking. Now it seems like that's kind of in for models to be kind of quirky looking, but then you had to look very waspy, just white and tall and cheekbones, and I didn't really fit the mold, so I started going out for commercials, and then my commercial agent started sending me out for film auditions, which is very unheard of. But I started booking, like I booked commercials and I started booking films. The first commercial I did was Atari.
Now for your Atari 2600, M Network Super Challenge Football and Baseball from Mattel Electronics.
And actually Deborah Foreman, Valley Girl, she and I worked together on that commercial, and it was like a levitating TV, and so that was my first commercial. And I think the first film that I did was with Rick Springfield in Hard to Hold. The fans were chasing him around. He's like naked in a towel running from people, and there's this group of girls like chasing him, and I got to be the front girl screaming and running. And there you go, there's your Screen Actors Guild card. Working with the man himself, Robert Altman, was amazing. And O.C. and Stiggs, as far as I know, had its success in Europe. It never really, it was a little disjointed, but so much fun to work on. A lot of improv, a lot of ad lib. His feeling was that after he hired you, like he had done a great deal of his job. Now it was kind of up to you. He's like, this is what's happening in the scene. This is like where we need to get to and go, you know? So it was a lot of just cameras rolling, and I did get into a wee bit of trouble though. At the end we had King Sunny Ade, who's playing, it's this big scene, and going with that like, hey, spur of the moment, spirit moves you thing, and acting like my character, who was kind of, I don't know, starry-eyed and a little bit kind of like a groupie. I ran onto stage and started screaming as if, you know, like they were the Beatles or something. And I could see Robert's like, get her off the stage. This is about King Sunny Ade. They were like, I mean, this was to showcase him, and there I was, you know, like, ah! So, but other than that, it was great. I didn't really follow the original series, but we were the Sluts, is what myself and the other actress were known as. The character's name was actually Charlotte, but we were referred to as the Sluts, even though we weren't really sluts, so. But we had these crazy outfits, and the only thing I remember about all the crazy outfits is it was just so freaking hot out there. I mean, this was summertime in Phoenix, so it was hot.
Oh, God.
After 4 martinis and a free lunch, they lose their bearings. Go back to University.
The skinny dipping scene. Well, that was interesting because that was my first time doing nudity on screen, and I got really terrified. You agree to it. It's not like they surprise you with it. You know that when you sign your contract that this is going to be required. But I got really, really scared, and then it turns out there was somebody on the crew who had really taken a liking to me, and I guess there were pictures of me all in the truck, and I found out about this, and it's like, so we had to like start closing the set a little bit more, like we're like, yeah, I'm not really comfortable with everybody being on set. And Altman, I mean, he's just a professional. He's like, I mean, he just needed to get the shot done. But somebody had told me about the person with the pictures in the truck, and I was just like, oh yeah, let's not have him on set. Zoo Gang came after O.C. and Stiggs, but that was all in Arizona. I believe it was the first film to get a PG-13 rating, so it was kind of a big deal. We were calling it Bad News Bears opens up a nightclub, basically, right?
We're in business.
I was not in a great mental space when I started the film and started consuming enormous amounts of food, like on all my spare time. So I started putting on weight very rapidly. And of course, since nothing's shot in sequence, I mean, you can see the difference from scene to scene. I mean, I'm like going like, like Elastigirl, right? I can laugh about it now. They didn't find it too funny at the time because it's like wardrobe couldn't like keep up with my changing sizes. There are enough challenges in filmmaking without having your lead actress like changing size day to day, right? It was a long time ago and I had since dealt with those issues. But for anybody out there struggling with food, like it's everybody, right? We all have the problems with it. I wasn't in the best place mentally, but as far as the additional lines, the additional work, I mean, I loved it.
I just bet $5 I could get you to dance with me.
You just lost $5.
When I got the role, you know, and I embellished the truth saying that I could do gymnastics when I really couldn't do gymnastics other than maybe a cartwheel and a somersault, right? But, you know, I think that probably added to Penn and John, who co-directed it, not being overly thrilled with me. But I know there was a lot of cutting that happened in that. Like there was that scene where I go to Ben Vereen's trailer and I'm like, I'm crying because it's just like, this is awful that we're gonna lose this place and blah, blah, blah. And this scene was very difficult for me to get. Like this was the first time I was asked to cry on screen, so I really had to get in that place. And I was working, I got there and the cameras are rolling. I'm like, yes, and I freaking nailed it. And then I saw it and it's like this weird cut where it's like I'm walking and then all of a sudden I'm at his trailer and I'm sobbing.
You were happy enough to rent us a place. Watch us bust our backs for months.
It's like, well. But, you know, it's a nice little film, and I get people still who are like, oh, yeah, I love that film, and it's you know, you gotta look for it, but I had a great time on it. So when I first started out in modeling and commercials, I mean, I was probably, you know, 90 pounds, dripping wet and blonde, and just little cute white chick, I guess, and inside, I always wanted to be doing something else. But again, like my agent, and it's, you know, you're not supposed to look like that, and blah, blah, blah. And it was after Zoo Gang that I really just kind of like, I'm coming out, man. This is me. So I definitely transitioned my look. Like my agent was trying to keep me like small and blonde and all those things. And he's like, you can't go out with that chartreuse hair. I'm like, chartreuse? Who does chartreuse hair? Like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing red and black. There was a lot less stuff that I could go out for then. Again, Hollywood was not hip at the time. And their idea of what punk rock was, or new wave, or alternative, or goth, or whatever, was very different than what was actually happening. So I think You Again was next. That was a sitcom with Jack Klugman and John Stamos, where I played the punk rock girlfriend. And I think the defining thing for the casting director on that was most people, I think, who went in for that try to like smooth down their hair and maybe like be a little more subdued and normal looking, where me being, I was like a goth chick at the time, I'm puffing up my hair. I'm like, I'm gonna look really good for him. You know, I'm getting more goth and more punk. And I think the casting people just loved that. But it was really fun. That was a very fun show to work on. And I got to kiss John Stamos. So again, like, I lucked out. I started getting the roles with that look because I was really authentic.
I hate this place.
Those other kids died. Why didn't the school cop to it?
They'd been expelled already. They didn't count.
That's the attitude around here, man. If you're not up to par, they just expel you. There's no room for slack-offs.
21 Jump Street. I mean, I got to work with not only Johnny Depp, but Brad Pitt, like before Brad had hit. That was a lot of fun. The character was fun.
I've been drunk so many times.
And you've done every guy I know.
I haven't done you, and I never will, so eat your heart out, Keith.
And for Friday the 13th, you know, that was totally me. I mean, that was the hair, the look, everything. So when I went in for Friday the 13th, I was told that it was another horror, like, slasher movie, because at the time that was the thing, right? It was called Repetition. And the character I was going in for was this Pat Benatar type, because again, at the time, Hollywood was like, yeah, Pat Benatar's punk rock because of that Love is a Battlefield video, right? So I went in for that, and obviously I was not a Pat Benatar type. Hollywood didn't know what the alternative scene was. So they go with these like ideas of Pat Benatar or something, and I wasn't it, and sold them on that it didn't need to be that. Again, I think, though, the authenticity is what won them over. Wardrobe took me out to go shopping and was basically like, what do you want? What would you wear? And I was like, ooh, this and this and this and this. But that was, I think that was the character. I mean, it was me. And I would have pushed it further if I had been able to. The death scene, it was originally written with this little hard body Pat Benatar type doing these little scissor exercises in her room, and the Jason, or whatever you want to call him, I know there's such a debate about it, it's like, so I'm just going to call him Jason. Roy comes in with a machete and cuts me up through the legs, up the middle. Makeup did me up that was how I had died, and the producers looked at it and were like, that's not going to get past the ratings board, so we need to change this. And I was all good with that because I didn't want to be exercising in my room anyway. But they said, what if you're like dancing? And I was like, okay. So I tried to do like what they would think dancing looked like, right? And kind of like, you know, like white girl dance or something, I don't know. And it really wasn't working for me. So I decided to go for it and to show them like what I was doing in clubs, what other people were doing in clubs. We went to a club where there was like more than a handful of us who did this like kind of mime, pop lock, whatever you want to call it. And they loved it. And they also wanted me to pick out some music.
Huh?
So, I mean, I had lots of creative control on this. I mean, they obviously were like, yeah, we can't use that music or that music or that music, but I was like the Pseudo Echo, who no one had heard of, and I loved their album. And it was perfect, that like His Eyes. So they used that, and I mean, the rest, I guess, is cinematic history. As I still, like, if you look on YouTube, it's a very popular video. And I even have people that spoof it. Well, it was used in Red Letter Day.
Okay, let's take a look here.
So it's still a thing.
Tim? What?
I'll get like a Facebook post that like, oh yeah, I'm listening to His Eyes right now. You know, it's like, it got to be a big hit, and I'm the one who put the frickin' thing on the map. Like, Still, I'm waiting for my thank you from Pseudo Echo. Hello, if you're Pseudo Echo, find me. So Reform School Girls, from the very beginning, like I read the script and I'm like, I love the script. I thought it was like going to be serious. Like I thought I'm like, oh, this is good. And I actually had read for Wendy's part initially. And then I found out that Wendy O. Williams was going to be doing it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay. I like now I know where this film is going.
Listen, sister.
Thanks, but I'm not your sister.
For the titillation, you know, the more B-movie cult thing. But what they did initially for casting, which was very unusual, like I'd never ever seen this before, was they actually had us spar with the reading. So they took myself and a couple other of the girls were all reading for the same part. We're all reading for the bad girl, and they had us go in and essentially get tough on each other to see who was the bigger badass, which is unusual. I didn't think it was really the most professional thing to do. I've never seen a casting session like that. And consequently, so I got the part of Fish, and I remember at the wrap party, this woman came up to me and she was like, "You took my part." And I was like, what?
Hey, Charlie. Looks like the rookie's giving you the eye.
Oh my God, who are you? I guess she had read for the part and didn't get it, but it was like, so that's kind of the flavor of the whole film. Like it actually was like Reform School Girls. There was a huge element of this like middle school weird thing going on there. And I actually, the reason I'm not in the outside shots is because I was fired. And I was fired because I backed out of my nudity clause. So again, when you sign your contract and they're like, yep, you're gonna do nudity, are you okay with that? I'm like, yes, absolutely, 100% okay with it. So day of shooting happens, and it's the obligatory shower scene, right? And so the director tells me, the three of you, Wendy, and Darcy, are going to saunter by the camera, and I'm gonna pan down. And I'm like, because Darcy and Wendy were like half my size. Like I was the size of Darcy and Wendy put together. And I was very pale too, because I was the goth kid, right? So I'm like, I'm really not comfortable doing that. Like just by myself, I'd be okay, but right next to Wendy and Darcy, I'm gonna be very intimidated. Do you think we could like maybe do the shot a little bit differently? No, that's the shot. It's not a big deal. You're gonna saunter by and I'm gonna pan down. And I was like, oh God, no. I was like, I can't do this.
What's the matter? Don't you like it?
I called Screen Actors Guild to find out what my rights were here, because I'm like, I'm not saying I won't do it. This particular shot is making me really uncomfortable. I'm not refusing to be in the scene. And Screen Actors Guild told me that you can back out of your nudity clause at any time except for after the scene's been shot. So I was like, I'm trying to work with you, and I just don't want to be in this shot. I'm so uncomfortable standing right next to Wendy and Darcy. And he was like, you're done. And we're going to withhold credit too. I was like, please, please. So anyway, that's why I'm not in the field scene, and I'm not in the riot scene. It was very close to the ending of shooting, so I didn't miss that much. And then just to add more to it, I actually read that was New World Productions, and New World did Zoo Gang, but after Reform School Girls, I went in for a big callback and going straight to the producers, and I went in the room and like doing my little schmoozy, like, yeah, hi, and I won't mention the name, but he was like, yeah, I'm so-and-so, and I'm like, New World. I'm like, so.
Oh, no, Charlie, I really think I'm gonna toss my cookies.
And I was never hired by New World again. several years later, and this is when I had dialed back like my whole look, and I was just working with being able to be more versatile, I guess.
Cookies and 2 pots of coffee.
Do you know you're pregnant?
Oh, yes, sir.
And I went in for the Freddy's Nightmares. I don't know, horror always seems to find me, and I love it. It's a great genre, so I have no problem with that. It was about the same time that I was doing Friday the 13th that my mom was working on The Nightmare on Elm Streets, so 3 and 4. So that was all kind of going on at the same time, and even though my mom and I weren't really like hanging out much at that time, it was kind of cool that we were like side by side doing the 2 franchises, right?
No, Lordy, I think the baby's coming.
But yeah, I got to the Freddy's Nightmare, which was a fairly short-lived series, but quite good. I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't work with Robert on that, but yeah, that was the baby that I had that I give birth to was, I guess, a baby from one of the films. So yeah, that was my little baby, and I had obviously no experience in childbirth at that point in my life, so I just, you know, gave it my best and screamed a lot, and I think blew the sound guy's ear out as I was doing, because they needed to like get an insert of me screaming, and yeah, I saw him kind of wither a bit, so.
I don't think your carpet is prepared to deal with that.
I have a little Polaroid of me holding the baby and like very proud mama. I worked on some soap operas, which were really fun, kind of like going in my mom's footsteps there, and then left Los Angeles, moved to Seattle where nothing's happening. I worked on a movie of the week. I think I was in my 30s and I had to play a teenage runaway.
Really?
I did, and was able to pull it off.
What about drugs?
Who? Jesse?
Yeah.
No way. Jesse wasn't into drugs. Neither was Paul.
I mean, you know what? If Wendy O. Williams can play a delinquent adolescent, then I could do a teenager in my 30s.
We'll see about that. Yes, we will.
All right, line up!
But yeah, there really wasn't much going on in Seattle, and I got to do a video game too. Arthur C. Clarke, Rama. They have actors actually on there, so I think they were thinking that this was going to be the new genre that was going to take off, that was going to really define video games.
As you unravel the many mysteries inside Rama, you'll have an experience unlike anything you've ever known before.
And I was Francesca Sabatini, this Italian scientist.
Hello again. Nicole told me that you had arrived. Welcome to Rama.
But it was basically you're interacting with an actor on the game who's telling you to do this, and some of it's like video game and some of it's live action, and it's like this mix of everything, but it's based on Arthur C. Clarke's Rama. So I got to meet with Gentry Lee, which was pretty cool. Serious, like, astrophysicist or whatever. I mean, it was great to do. It was just done on a little sound stage in Seattle, so.
Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
So when I was in Seattle, there's really not much acting work there, so I had to kind of think outside the box for creativity, and had always wanted to like pick up photography, and so I started doing photography, like mad photography, and started with like kind of doing like dark fine art, and then like somehow like got into family portraiture. I did that for several years and kind of walked away from the other side of the camera. And then, you know, we've been in Canada for about 8 years, and I sought out representation here and just started going out, and I've been really, really fortunate. Again, the horror genre has found me, and I'm so thankful for that. We can help. We have room for 2 more souls.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh,
You're good people.
And I've got to work on like 3 amazing projects in the past couple of years. And Red Letter Day is one of those. So the other ones that are coming out are In the Tall Grass. It's a Stephen King. It's going to be on Netflix. And Come True, which is another very cool horror movie, great script. Again, I feel very, very fortunate. These aren't huge roles, and I'm happy, and it's so much fun to be back on a set and be working with amazing people again. So I'm pig in the proverbial puddle.
That good, huh?
I have a file on my computer called My Illustrious Career, and it's very, I say that tongue in cheek, because it's been lots of spots, lots of fits and starts, lost a lot of parts. In fact, it was down to the wire for War of the Roses, and it was like between me and one other actress for the part of the daughter. I was so upset when I lost that.
Piss off.
Heathers was another one that I was like down to the wire for, and they went with all blondes. I was brunette at the time. When I did go in for Sid and Nancy, there have been several films where it's like down to the wire and you lose it, and it's a tough gig. It's gotten better now, and the roles for women are much more interesting and more developed, and not as like you have to look a certain way. Like it seems like there's a lot more opening, and you look at the women working today and they have an unusual look and they're not cookie cutter, which is so refreshing.
You don't set a place for a dead person.
I said I was sorry.